Hi guys, Rob Seiler here again from Studying for Exams Made Simple. Welcome back. This is video number 2 in this series, and the subject of today's video is the question-answer reflex. Now in video 1, which was all about making fundamental changes to the way that you study for your exams, we spoke about how we learn to play sport, and we also talked about the different aspects of learning to play sport which were really important. We also spoke about how we learn to study for exams, or how we learn in general, and we came up with 5 main things, which were asking questions, making mistakes, feedback, copying and repetition. We also noticed that these 5 aspects of learning were very closely related to many of the ways that we actually learn to play sport. And in particular, I spoke about asking questions, how we learn by asking questions. If you don't ask questions, then you don't get any answers. And if you don't get any answers, then you don't learn. One particular aspect of asking questions, I came up with a phrase called the question-answer reflex. And I mainly want to emphasize the fact, or the reflex aspect of this way that we learn, which is very closely related, I believe, to training our reflexes when we're learning to play sport. So today, in this video, I just want to go in a little bit more depth about what I call the question-answer reflex. Okay, now here's a little guy. He's just about to touch something hot probably for the very first time in his life. Does he say to himself, gee, this stove is hot, I better not touch it any longer because it'll probably cause a really bad burn on my hand? And obviously I'm assuming that he can even talk at this age. But obviously that's not going to happen. He's going to touch the hot stove, and he's going to pull his hand away really quickly, and so that he doesn't get burned. He's probably not going to touch a hot stove again. So he's actually learned something from touching something hot. But the point here is that it's a reflex action. He's touched a hot stove, and he reflexly pulls his hand away. Doesn't have to really think about it. It's already pre-programmed, if you like, in his body, there's no real training involved. But this is obviously part of the learning process. Now, imagine let's take this example to say learning how to play sport. Now, let's say you're at one end of the tennis court, and then there's Roger Federer at the other end, and he's about to serve to you. Now, Roger Federer serves pretty fast, usually over 100 kilometers an hour. Do you stand there waiting for his serve, thinking to yourself, I wonder whether I should do a forehand or a backhand? I mean, if you spend time thinking about how you're going to react or respond to his serve, then it's probably going to be too late. The ball's gone past you at 100 kilometers an hour, and you've lost the point. So the reason you practice so much in tennis and any sort of sport is to train your reflexes so that in this situation you hardly have to think at all. So when your opponent serves to you at over 100 kilometers an hour, you can react in a millisecond and hit the ball back for a winner. In other words, your brain virtually has no time to even think about what you're going to do. It happens pretty much automatically. But in this case, the reflex has to be trained. It's not like you're born with this reflex like when you touch something hot. In this case, you've got to train your reflexes. You don't automatically become a good tennis player and train all those reflexes. They take time. So you're probably saying to yourself, okay, what does this have to do with studying for exams? Now, imagine, once again, we'll go back to tennis. Imagine that when someone hits a ball to you in the game of tennis, it's like being asked a question in the exam. And returning the ball is like giving an answer. So in other words, a tennis match is pretty much a whole bunch of questions and answers when you really think about it. So someone hitting the ball to you or asking you a question in the exam is what we call a stimulus, and returning the ball or answering an exam question is what we call a response. Now, a reflex is defined as an action that's performed in response to a stimulus. In other words, when you combine a stimulus and a response, we call that a reflex. And I mean, in the example of touching something hot, the incredible heat is the stimulus, and pulling your hand away really quickly is the response. In this case, obviously, the reflex doesn't have to be trained because your body's already pre-programmed to protect itself from injury. But as I said, in tennis, we have to train those reflexes, or in any sport, we have to train those reflexes so they become virtually automatic. And as I said, that's why we practice sports so much, so we can train our reflexes to minimise the amount of time that we have to think about it. There's so little time to actually think when things are happening quickly. Now, in the exam, the same situation exists. If you think about it, you've only got a certain amount of time, to respond, or as we said, give answers to lots of stimuli, which are the exam questions. Because we have so little time, you have to. If you don't respond quickly enough, for example, compared to say tennis, then you're going to fail. And I invented this term, the question-answer reflex, just to describe this sort of situation. Once again, if your reflexes or your question-answer reflex is not trained well for the exams, then just like in sport, you're probably going to fail. So, wouldn't it be great to train this question-answer reflex so you could react much faster in the exam? So, whenever a question is asked, you react at lightning speed with the answer. Almost like touching something hot and pulling your hand away. So as soon as a question is fired at you in the exam, which is, as I said, a stimulus, your mental reflexes are so well trained that your answer responds almost immediately. You hardly even have to think about it. You've done all the thinking in your pre-exam training, and you've trained this reflex, and your answer is virtually automatic. Now, I want you to understand how important this is. This question-answer reflex is responsible for, in a large part, for the huge changes that I made in my exam results. So I want you to really understand, what I'm talking about here. Now, as an extension to this, if information in the exam is expected to come out in this question-answer format, doesn't it make more sense that it should go in much the same way? And once again, I compare this with, say, tennis. You wouldn't train for a tennis match by hitting a baseball with a bat. But why do students train for exams by highlighting and underlining notes? Can you see what I'm getting at here? Wouldn't it make more sense to train for exams using the same system that you use in the exam, which is questions and answers? And that's why it's so important to train your question-answer reflex. Now, what I'm talking about in these videos is what I call strategy. The actual tactics is all part of my Studying for Exams Made Simple system. But what I'm releasing to you here is a large part of that system, which I call the actual strategy, or the philosophy behind the tactics. So I'm not giving you the actual tactics here, but I want you to try and, as I said, connect the dots and see how you can apply this to how you study for your exams. Now, we've spoken in this video about the question-answer reflex. The next video is going to be about making mistakes, and I'm going to give you some strategy about making mistakes, and how in most cases we make our mistakes in the exams when it's too late. So I'm going to talk about a way that you can learn from making mistakes, or how important it is to learn from making mistakes before the actual exam situation. Now, if you're watching these videos on the internet, on YouTube or whatever, and you want to see more of them and future videos that I'll be making, just go to collegestudysskills.com. That's with hyphens /ace your exams, also with hyphens. And I'll give you instructions on where you can go and watch all these videos, and also you can jump into the conversation we're having there, about various questions and comments about how to study for exams. And I try to answer all the questions and also the comments. So you're probably going to learn a lot if you go there. So until the next video, I'll see you soon.